Karen's dog didn't just trample Emma's garden, it trampled her peace. For weeks, Emma watched helplessly as her beloved sanctuary, the garden she'd built to honor her late mother, was destroyed piece by piece. When she dared to ask her neighbor to take responsibility, Karen mocked her, waving away her concerns with a smirk and a sarcastic laugh. The HOA, led by Karen's close friend, dismissed her pleas and punished her instead. But Karen underestimated Emma. She didn't know Emma was quietly documenting every act of destruction, every petty insult, every misuse of authority. And when Emma's cameras captured Karen deliberately releasing her dog into Emma's yard, the game changed. What came next left the entire neighborhood in shock, and Karen's reign of entitlement crumbled in ways she never saw coming. But let's start from the beginning. Emma Johnson loved her garden. It wasn't just a backyard, it was her sanctuary. Rows of vibrant roses lined the fences, a meticulously tended vegetable patch thrived in the center, and a koi pond sparkled under the afternoon sun. It was a space where she felt close to her late mother, who had taught her the art of gardening. Every seed planted, every bloom nurtured, was a tribute to their bond. But as perfect as her little oasis seemed, it was about to face an unexpected storm. That storm came in the form of her new neighbor, Karen, and Karen's boisterous golden retriever, Max. At first glance, Max appeared harmless, an energetic, playful dog who bounded around their adjoining yards with uncontainable excitement. Emma thought little of it. "Dogs will be dogs," she mused with a smile, but she had no idea how quickly Max would turn her dream into a nightmare. It started innocently enough. One evening, Emma stepped outside to water her plants and noticed something strange. The soft, freshly planted tulips along the garden path were crushed. Confused, she scanned the yard until her eyes landed on a set of muddy paw prints leading directly from Karen's yard. The next morning confirmed her suspicions. Her vegetable patch, where her children loved to pick carrots and cucumbers, was torn up. Max had dug deep holes, scattering soil and chewing through half the harvest. Surely Karen didn't mean for this to happen, Emma thought, deciding to address the issue calmly. Walking over to Karen's front door, Emma rehearsed her words. When Karen finally answered, wearing a robe and an air of disinterest, Emma explained the situation politely. She pointed out the paw prints and the damage, hoping Karen would understand. Instead, Karen smirked. "Dogs will be dogs," she said, mimicking Emma's earlier thoughts, but with a tone that made it clear she wasn't taking any responsibility. "Maybe you should build a fence if it bothers you that much," Karen added with a casual shrug before closing the door. Emma felt a surge of frustration, but resolved not to let it ruin her day. She returned to her garden, patched up the damage, and moved on. Unfortunately, Max wasn't done. Over the next week, the destruction only escalated. Roses she had spent months nurturing were flattened, garden tools left out overnight were chewed beyond recognition, and worst of all, the koi pond, her mother's favorite feature, was knocked over, leaving her beloved fish gasping for life. Emma spent hours trying to save them, her heart breaking with each one that didn't make it. By the end of the week, Emma stood in the middle of what had become a disaster zone. Her hands were scraped from hours of cleaning up, and her eyes stung with unshed tears. "This is my sanctuary," she whispered to herself, gripping a broken rose stem in her hand. "I can't let her dog ruin it." Even as she tried to steel herself, doubt crept in. What could she do? Karen clearly didn't care, and the HOA, known for their apathy, wouldn't intervene. Emma felt alone, overwhelmed by the injustice of it all. But deep down, a spark of determination began to grow. Her garden was more than just flowers and vegetables. It was her safe space, her connection to family, and a place of healing. She wasn't going to let Karen or her dog take that away from her. Looking out over her yard, now a shadow of its former beauty, Emma made a silent promise. She would find a way to stop this, for herself, for her kids, and for everything her garden represented. The fight for her sanctuary had begun. Determined to handle the situation maturely, Emma spent an evening drafting a polite letter to Karen. She detailed the destruction Max had caused, included photos of the trampled tulips and uprooted vegetables, and respectfully asked Karen to secure her dog. Emma even ended the letter with a warm, "I'm sure we can work together to resolve this." She slipped it into Karen's mailbox that night, hoping for an amicable solution. The next morning, as Emma was pruning her roses, she heard the unmistakable sound of Karen's voice. Loud, sharp, and getting closer. Karen stormed through the gate uninvited, her expression a mix of indignation and superiority. "You think you can tell me how to live?" she snapped, waving the letter like it was evidence in a courtroom. "My dog has as much right to this space as you do. Maybe if you didn't have such a tempting garden, Max wouldn't even care about your yard." Emma tried to explain calmly, but Karen cut her off, turning her back with a dramatic huff. As she marched out, she muttered loudly enough for Emma to hear, "Some people just love to make drama." Emma stood there, stunned. Her heart raced, her cheeks flushed, but she refused to let Karen's hostility get to her. "It's just a misunderstanding," she reassured herself, though doubt was beginning to creep in. Over the next week, however, it became clear that Karen's reaction wasn't just a one-time outburst. It was the start of something far more insidious. Emma woke one morning to find a pile of dog waste left deliberately on her walkway, directly in her path. She cleaned it up silently, refusing to give Karen the satisfaction of a confrontation. But the next day, the waste reappeared, bigger, messier, and positioned even closer to her front door. Emma's frustration grew with each act of petty retaliation. When she installed a small decorative fence around her garden as a last-ditch effort to keep Max out, Karen escalated. A few days later, Emma received a formal letter from the HOA, citing her fence as unauthorized and demanding its removal. Emma was stunned. The fence was barely 2 feet tall, no more intrusive than a row of garden gnomes. How could this possibly be a violation? She quickly realized that Karen, whose best friend served on the HOA board, must have filed the complaint herself. One evening, as Emma watered her remaining vegetables, she caught Karen smirking from her porch, sipping iced tea like she was watching a personal victory unfold. The sight sent a chill of anger through Emma. "This isn't just about Max anymore," Emma thought. "She's trying to push me out of my own space." But Emma wasn't the type to give up easily. She began documenting everything. Every time Max entered her yard, she snapped a photo. Every act of vandalism she recorded with timestamps. She even kept a log of her interactions with Karen, detailing every dismissive comment and petty insult. Though the weight of the conflict bore down on her, Emma found comfort in her quiet determination. She knew that the fight ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was ready. "This garden is more than just plants," she thought, watching the setting sun cast a warm glow over her yard. "It's my home, and I'll defend it." As the days passed, Emma's resolve only strengthened. For every petty act of Karen's, Emma responded with quiet preparation, building a case that she hoped would one day bring justice. Little did Karen know, her entitled smirk was about to meet an immovable force. Emma sat at her kitchen table, her laptop open, the faint hum of her coffee machine filling the otherwise quiet room. Her garden journal was spread out beside her, pages filled with photos, notes, and timestamps, evidence of every trespass Max had made. She'd had enough. It was time to act. Her first step was seeking professional advice. Emma scheduled a meeting with a local lawyer, a kind woman named Marissa, who had a reputation for standing up to neighborhood bullies. Marissa reviewed Emma's evidence, her sharp eyes scanning through photos and letters. "You've got a solid case," she said, her voice calm but firm. "The HOA's decision on your fence is questionable at best, and Karen's actions, well, let's just say they're far from defensible." Emma felt a flicker of hope. Following Marissa's advice, Emma filed a formal petition with the HOA to reconsider their ruling on her fence. She provided the same evidence she had shown Marissa: photos of Max, records of the damage, and even screenshots of Karen's dismissive messages. Emma hoped this time the board would see reason. But at the next HOA meeting, she quickly realized how deeply Karen's influence ran. The board, led by Karen's close friend Tom, dismissed her petition with barely a glance at the evidence. "The rules are clear," Tom said, his tone more condescending than professional. "Unauthorized structures, even small ones, can't be permitted. We have to maintain community standards." Karen sat smugly in the audience, her arms crossed, clearly enjoying the show. Emma walked home that evening with a heavy heart, but she refused to let despair win. If the HOA wouldn't help, she'd find someone who would. That night, Emma decided to share her story on social media. She posted photos and videos of her once beautiful garden, now damaged and overrun, along with footage of Max caught in the act. She described how Karen had dismissed her concerns and how the HOA had turned a blind eye. "I just want to protect my garden," she wrote. "This isn't about being petty. It's about standing up for what's right." Within hours, the post began to gain traction. Comments poured in, words of support, outrage, and advice. "This is unacceptable," one person wrote. "Contact animal control and document everything." Another commenter, who claimed to be a lawyer, offered to review her case pro bono. Others even offered to help fund her fight through crowdfunding. Encouraged by the overwhelming support, Emma took the next step. She installed security cameras around her yard, their lenses discreetly positioned to capture any future incidents. She also followed the advice of her online supporters and filed an official complaint with animal control detailing Karen's negligence in managing Max. A week later, the cameras proved their worth. Late one evening, Emma sat on her couch, scrolling through messages of encouragement on her phone when her security app sent an alert. Her heart raced as she opened the live feed. There, in the grainy black and white footage, was Karen. She was standing at her gate, holding it open as Max darted into Emma's yard. Karen lingered for a moment, looking around before retreating with a self-satisfied grin. Emma couldn't believe what she was seeing. She downloaded the footage, her hands trembling, not with fear, but with determination. This was the proof she needed, indisputable evidence that Karen's actions were deliberate. For the first time in weeks, Emma allowed herself a small, triumphant smile. Karen had underestimated her, but Emma wasn't backing down. The tide was about to turn. Emma sat in her living room, her laptop glowing in the dim evening light. The video from her security cameras played on the screen, crystal clear, Karen standing at her gate, holding it open as Max darted into Emma's yard. The evidence was irrefutable. Emma exhaled deeply, her hands trembling, not from fear, but from the determination to see this through. She saved the footage to multiple devices, knowing this would be her turning point. The next morning, Emma contacted her lawyer, Marissa, who was equally stunned by the footage. "This is exactly what we needed," Marissa said, her voice firm and confident. "Not only does this prove Karen's actions were intentional, but it also highlights the HOA's negligence in addressing the issue. It's time to take this to court." Emma filed a lawsuit against Karen for property damage and harassment and included the HOA for failing to mediate and enforce community standards. The case gained traction quickly, especially after local news outlets picked up the story. The footage of Karen's actions paired with Emma's heartfelt interviews about her love for her garden struck a chord with viewers. Support poured in from neighbors, strangers, and even gardening enthusiasts across the state. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation on the day of the trial. Emma sat at the plaintiff's table, her hands clasped tightly around a pen. Across the room sat Karen, her expression a mixture of forced confidence and thinly veiled irritation. Tom, the HOA president, sat beside her, nervously shuffling papers. When Emma's turn came, she presented her evidence with quiet determination. She showed photos of the destroyed garden, videos of Max causing chaos, and most damning of all, the footage of Karen deliberately releasing Max into her yard. Each piece of evidence painted a clear picture of Karen's blatant disregard and the HOA's failure to intervene. Marissa's closing argument was powerful, emphasizing not only the damage to Emma's property, but the emotional toll Karen's actions had taken. "This isn't just about a garden," Marissa said, her voice steady but passionate. "It's about a person's right to feel safe and respected in their own home." Emma Johnson has shown remarkable resilience in the face of continued harassment. It's time for accountability. The judge didn't hesitate. In her ruling, she condemned Karen's behavior as reckless and malicious. Karen was fined for property damage and ordered to install a secure fence to keep Max confined to her own yard. The HOA wasn't spared either. They were held accountable for negligence and ordered to pay Emma damages for the distress and financial loss caused by their inaction. The neighborhood erupted with chatter when the story aired on local news that evening. For weeks, Emma had been the quiet, hard-working woman who loved her garden, but now she was a hero. Karen, on the other hand, became a pariah. Neighbors avoided her, and she stopped showing her face in public. The HOA, embarrassed and under pressure, restructured its board, removing Karen's allies and instituting stricter oversight to prevent future issues. As Emma stood in her garden that evening, the air filled with the sweet scent of roses and the soft chirping of birds, she felt a wave of relief. The koi pond had been restored, her vegetables replanted, and her sanctuary was hers again. This garden isn't just a space, Emma thought, watching the sun dip below the horizon. It's a testament to standing up for what's right. Her story didn't just end with justice for herself. It became an inspiration for others facing similar struggles, a reminder that even in the face of pettiness and entitlement, resilience and determination could prevail. Justice, Emma knew, wasn't just served. It bloomed, just like her garden.